The complete collapse of Putin's generals. They promised to take Pokrovsk and Kupiansk, but ended up with hell on earth. The Ukrainian armed forces are burning the enemy. A national sweep has already begun. Shock, their plans have crumbled to dust. What is happening right now on these two main sections of the front? Watch in the report.
The generals of the Russian Federation promised Kremlin chief Putin to capture Kupiansk and Pokrovsk, but they failed to carry out the order.
Putin specifically gave the order by mid. Putin's generals failed to take Pokrovsk and Kupiansk as promised. Ukrainian forces resisted, a national sweep began, and President Zelensky responded.
Sweep.
Of Kupiansk, Kharkiv region from the occupiers, up to 60 Russians remain in Kupiansk. The sweep is underway. We will clear everything out, we know. Basically, the dates have been set. They were discussed at the headquarters. We won't share this information just yet.
The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation urgently prepared a response. Allegedly, the Russians are advancing in the city.
The head of the Kyiv regime has completely lost touch with reality and, listening to Syrsky's false reports, is absolutely unaware of the actual situation on the ground. The dates are set, but not yet public. Russia is advancing, and Ukraine's leadership is unaware of the real situation.
He sees Ukraine's position in Kupiansk as hopeless, despite Putin's recent success claims. The chief of the Russian General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, falsely reported to the Kremlin dictator that Russian troops had completed the encirclement of Ukrainian forces.
Your comrades in arms are steadily advancing on all fronts with determination.
However, Ukrainian forces held their positions despite the enemy shelling the crossings and trying to break through the defenses.
The desire to capture, Gerasimov falsely claimed Ukrainian troops were surrounded, but they held out. Russia wanted Donbas gains to show progress.
Ukrainian units have already managed to regain control over part of the built-up area in the city. A military operation by Ukrainian forces is underway with the objective of cutting off the enemy's supply routes and clearing the city. Several units are taking part in it.
We are destroying them, but their numbers do not decrease. That is, they are constantly bringing in reinforcements, and a new sabotage group comes through. These saboteurs avoid direct confrontations with our personnel. Ukrainian units have already managed to regain
control over part of the city's buildings. A military operation by Ukrainian forces is underway, with the objective of cutting off the enemy's supply routes and clearing the city. Several units are taking part in it. In September, Russian occupiers managed to break into Kubinsk through a pipeline. Against this backdrop, the situation around the city has escalated. Now the occupiers are trying to infiltrate the city. Disguised civilians. Once Ukrainian forces managed to completely cut off the supply routes and finish. Russian troops continue their active offensive towards Pokrovsk in the Donetsk region.
The Russians
are trying to act covertly, approaching our positions through tree lines. We managed to detect the enemy and destroy them. In Pokrovsk itself, it is difficult to conduct combat operations using vehicles since the city is filled with anti-tank hedgehogs and concrete triangles. Mainly, the enemy infantry uses motorcycles and buggies.
the possibilities. Russian troops advance, but we detect and stop them. Obstacles block further movement. Certain measures have been taken to prevent this, and Russian forces have gathered a large army here. Our groups are present and sabotage groups are being cleared out. The front line is more complex than it appears on the map. But out there in the field, where everything happens,
right here on the ground, right now.
Russian forces entered Pokrovsk disguised as civilians, formed small groups, and used firing positions and the terrain at night to slip through, making defense difficult.
The defense forces were able to successfully replenish their supplies.
their supplies, reinforce their units, and stop the enemy's attempts to cut off the Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad highway. The air assault forces...
The Marines and the mechanized brigades are currently the main barrier for the Russians in the Pokrovsk direction, but everyone is doing a great job.
The situation as it currently stands.
In the Kupiansk and Pokrovsk directions remains dynamic. The fighting continues. The Russian army is suffering simply enormous losses in the Pokrovsk direction. Hundreds killed in just this area in a single day. Reports and local publications show a large number of dead occupiers in the built-up areas and tree lines.
To save themselves, commanders, whether or not they keep their ranks or even their heads, will throw everything they have into the fight, sparing nothing. In order to save themselves, commanders may not keep their ranks
or even their heads. They will throw everything they have into battle. They won't hold back.
On manpower and equipment, Russia has allocated an astonishing amount of human resources and materials to capture this city. They infiltrated, they had to take some action, but not to dig in and build up. To establish a foothold, you need to have... But what are you supposed to fight with if you have, only 10 rounds for your rifle? Or perhaps, if you are fortunate, as many as 20 rounds per rifle. In some rare cases, you might be issued up to 30 rounds. But that is the absolute maximum. There simply are no more available. Once those are gone, that's it. There are no additional supplies to rely on. Despite suffering enormous losses and facing these severe shortages, Russian commanders continue to send their troops forward, pressing on with their orders regardless of the dire circumstances and the lack of essential ammunition and supplies.
To launch wave after wave of assaults, clearly demonstrating a disregard for the lives of their own soldiers, just to please Putin, and present any kind of advance as a victory. Disregarding the lives of their own soldiers just to please Putin and present any kind of advance as a victory. Moscow, get ready. Systematic strikes on the energy sector, the armed forces of Ukraine will deprive the Russian capital of heat and light. Shock. Muscovites will have to survive. What awaits this giant city when the systems collapse? The plan of the Ukrainian defenders is deadly precise. To find out what happens next, keep watching. Ukrainian drones are striking the Russian energy system more and more frequently and on a larger scale. On the night of October 5th, Ukrainian UAVs attacked energy infrastructure in the Vladimir and Oryol regions. A substation in Vladimir and a power plant in Oryol were struck. Locals reported missile attacks. Source of electricity and
Heat.
a second missile likely hit the Oryol power plant on October 31st. At that time, the city was left without power. Also on the last day of October, the Vladimir thermal power plant caught fire.
Moreover, this substation supplies electricity to the central region, including Moscow, Vladimir, Nizhny Novgorod, and partially Ivanovo regions. In general, it also participates in transmitting power from the Kalinin nuclear power plant to the Kostroma State District power plant and other major...
The stable operation of the Vladimir substation is critically important for the reliability of the Russian energy system's balance. It holds special significance. Energy from the Kalinin nuclear power plant is supplied through it. This makes the substation one of the key facilities for the Moscow energy hub. The Security Service of Ukraine wants to cause a blackout in the Whitestone, Moscow, by striking substations around Moscow. In recent weeks, attacks on important energy nodes have been recorded. Azamas. The Balashevskaya power station, which is an important facility in its region, was operating at a capacity of 500 kilowatts during a specific period in October. This period lasted from the 16th to the 25th of the month. The output of 500 kilowatts is considered moderate for a power station of this type, and it is typically enough to provide electricity to local homes and businesses. The choice of these dates may have been due to scheduled maintenance, testing, or a planned operational cycle. Before this period, the facility may have been preparing for this phase or carrying out other necessary activities to ensure smooth operation during the specified time frame.
A blackout is nothing to be afraid of. The SBS birds, together with other components of Ukraine's deep strike forces, promise you a swift, albeit forced adaptation. Matches, flashlights, candles. By the way, strikes at substations. The head of unmanned systems, Robert Brody, warned Muscovites to prepare for blackouts. A blackout is nothing to fear. The SBS birds and other Ukrainian deep strike forces promise a swift, if forced adaptation. You'll manage. Matches, flashlights, candles. Use your battery-powered garlands. We won't inform you about every substation hit by SBS birds. 750 kilowatts, 500 kilowatts, and so on. Just remember, light, warmth, boom, darkness, cold. Your reconnaissance in public channels still works, as long as there's internet. Strikes were announced and happened. The enemy, even knowing the targets, couldn't organize an effective defense. Blackouts were announced, and only after that...
This is truly incredible. Former President Trump applied strong diplomatic pressure on Chinese leader Xi Jinping. In response, China has now chosen to distance itself from Russian President Vladimir Putin. This surprising move has sent shockwaves through the international community. Many are now referring to this as the deal of the century.
Washington and Beijing have officially signed an agreement. There were secret behind-the-scenes negotiations taking place for quite some time. But did President Trump truly succeed in his efforts? Did he actually manage to sway the Chinese government and influence China's decisions as he had hoped?
Toward a global shift on the issue of war, a new economic
balance or a political knockout. China is, without a doubt, by far the largest in the world. When it comes to size,
China is a major producer of goods. How exactly does China make its money?
China mainly exports to the US. After a Trump-Xi meeting, deals were renewed and some US agricultural tariffs were lifted. Let's put it this way.
That is not exactly correct. While it may seem close to the truth at first glance, there are actually some important differences or nuances that set it apart from being entirely accurate. In other words, the situation is not quite as straightforward as it might initially appear.
Based on the interests of China's economy, it in many ways requires the United States.
The US and China have also agreed to establish direct communication between their armed forces. As stated by Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth, this will help prevent potential conflicts between the countries. Another step that US and China will talk to avoid conflict. China rejects Russian oil. According to Bloomberg, major state-owned companies and smaller private enterprises in China have canceled nearly half of their oil shipments from Russia after October's. And when the question arises of whom China will choose,
Russia or the US, it's important to understand a simple thing. There is the US and one of its states, the largest one, is California. The economy of California is twice the size of Russia's economy. The economy of just California the state
of the United States of America is equivalent to 2 economies of the Russian Federation.
China values the US more than Russia, but Russia wants ties, so Putin sent his prime minister to Beijing to sign agreements.
Russia relies on selling resources to China, making it economically dependent. China is aware of this leverage. The US is also a key sales market. Ukraine's intelligence reports that resource projects in Siberia and the Far East mainly benefit China, while local communities see little gain.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.